Welcome back to the program. I'm Zev Brenner. Always a privilege, always a treat to have Rabbi Simcha Scholar with us. I know him back for so many years. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Chai Lifeline, which is a Jewish community's leading health, actually children's health and welfare association. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us. It's really always a pleasure to be here to speak about Chai Lifeline and to speak about this wonderful that's coming up soon.
We'll talk about the virtual global gala, but first I just want to tell our audience, and you can do a great job, but you're at the helm. You've seen the organization grow. Chai Lifeline does amazing work as a children's health support network, which is really the leading one in the Jewish community.
Right. We are the largest Jewish community's health support network, dealing with pediatric illness or the effects of illness on children. And we have a wider range of support systems, both recreational, psychosocial, financial, advocacy, our camps, famous camps for children with cancer, or other disabilities, Camp Simcha Special. What we do is we deal with the entire family unit to make sure that they are capable of dealing with life's one of most horrific situations where a child gets ill with a catastrophic illness. We also deal with all different types of trauma that affect the Jewish community, whether it's, God forbid, a fire where people die or major accident. We have a division called Project Chai, which is also one of the largest community-based crisis intervention organizations in the world. Chai Lifeline is global. It has 14 regional offices throughout the world. We deal with close to 6,000 children and their families on a daily basis, helping them with concrete services, whether it's food in the hospitals or transportation or advocacy to the hospitals or respite or, as I said before, recreational, financial things. And we are the ombudsman for the Jewish community for health situations throughout the world. And we're open to everyone. We are an all-encompassing and loving organization, and we help anyone that needs our help. And this event that's coming up is our key fundraiser to be able to maintain and grow, because during COVID, our services, believe it or not, have dramatically increased because children that are ill and families that have an ill child, COVID has really cut off a lot of the lifelines of a lot of other systems of support, and they now are leaning on us. The trauma situations have multiplied due to difficulties, and it's a challenging time out there for all of us, and especially for a child that's ill.
And you correctly point out that during COVID your services have increased, but I'm not sure if the money has increased on the same level, because the need is greater, and I'm sure your resources are stretched a lot more during these times.
That's absolutely correct, and that's why this event is so critical for us. We're putting together all of our regional offices and all of our fundraising efforts into one event because our services, the need for our services have increased dramatically, and our fundraising results have not. So we are reaching out to the goodness of your radio audience, and there are a lot of good people there, to get deep into their hearts, into their souls, and to express their humanitarian and philanthropic desires to help children. Now, everyone wants to help a child. Everyone loves a child, and everyone is concerned about a sick child, and that's who we are. We are the ombudsman for the sick children of the world, and we have to help these young kids and their families get through this trauma, get through this difficulty, get through this obstacle, climb over these hurdles. We got to make these kids into productive adults. We got to help them through. Medical science is great, and they have made tremendous growth and results. I mean, we're not there yet, obviously. It's not catastrophic illness. It's not just with a pill. But we have to get them through the illness healthy from the illness and healthy emotionally, and that's the critical part of our services, to be able to keep the family unit together and to give them the warmth and the need and the support service, the professional support services, that these young men and women can become productive adults, contributing adults in the community. And we've had many success stories.
And I might add, you were my go-to person. Now, you mentioned, obviously, kids with cancer and catastrophic illnesses, but whenever there's a catastrophe, whether it's the killing in Jersey City or other thing where children are involved and need psychological help, you're the person I call to come out and speak out and help.
Yeah, we have hundreds of trained professional crisis interventionists throughout the world. There's no organization in the world that has such a vast network of people to be able to respond to various different things throughout the world on a moment's notice. We have teams in Los Angeles, in Antwerp, in England, Canada, Chicago, Baltimore, Miami, New York, New Jersey, and many other places. We have teams of people that are trained and supervised by world-class professionals, and that are very effective. And that's what people call. I mean, we are the largest in the world community-based organization in the world that deals with this stuff.
Now, this all costs money. Hanukkah's coming, so there's a tradition of Hanukkah Geld where people give out money, especially for good causes. And you're doing something special. I've gone to your dinners, and they've really been gala dinners. Obviously, because of COVID, you can't have it. So you've taken your dinner global. So you're having a global gala, a World of Hope event on Tuesday night this week at 8 o'clock. Tell us about it, because you got some really top-of-the-line stars.
Yeah, we have Lior Raz, who's the star of the Israeli hit show Fauda. He is going to be our MC. It's an incredible show. One of the most well-viewed shows on Netflix, and he's a very famous person throughout the world. And David Blaine is a special performance by him, and a very special musical performance by a child and some really world-class professional musicians. Plus, of course, we are honoring numerous people. Each one has contributed significantly, and the show is going to be entertaining, exciting. It's going to be educating. People will be educated about Chai Lifeline. They will feel the emotion of these children. They will feel the love of Chai Lifeline. They will feel the magic of Camp Simcha. They will feel the goodness that comes out of helping someone, especially in this season of Hanukkah, this entire season of giving. And these wonderful stars, Lior Raz and David Blaine, are promised that it's going to be very entertaining, very magical, and it's open to the public, free of charge. All you have to do is register at www.theglobalgala.com, www.theglobalgala.com, and you'll be able to experience this in the comforts of your home, and you can have all the popcorn you want.
And it's great. And they're terrific stars, and it goes for a good cause, and it's free. You can watch it for free. Let's give the information. That's Tuesday night at 8 o'clock, correct? December 8th. And it's a great pre-Hanukkah event that people should participate and then help Chai Lifeline at the same time. So how many people do you anticipate maybe watching it around the world?
We are preparing for tens of thousands. So we see already that a couple of thousand already have registered. And we know that many more people are registering every minute. I'm sure many of your listening audience they're going to do this. They're going to go right away and register at www.theglobalgala.com, theglobalgala.com, and we have the capacity to handle as many people as register.
And I urge people to do that. Go to theglobalgala.com. You'll be worth your while. You get to see some great stars performances and see what Chai Lifeline does, which is really give life to the family, not just to the kids. that are facing challenges through cancer or other catastrophic illnesses, but also the family needs support in the Chai Life, and does an excellent job with that. I want to thank you, Rabbi Simcha Scholar, the CEO of Chai Lifeline, the Jewish community's leading Jewish Children's Health Support Network. Thank you for being with us. Good luck with the gala.
Thank you, and thank you, Zev, and thank you all of you that are listening tonight, tonight, whatever you're listening. And please join us, join the children, join our journey, www.theglobalgala.com.
Thank you.
Be well.
And that's Rabbi Simcha Scholar. Always a pleasure to have him on there. Does amazing, such good work for children and their families. When we come back, speaking of amazing, Dr. Tevi Troy, he is a historian of the president, what happens in the White House and in Washington, and we'll look at the Israeli ambassadors and some of their tales of being in Washington, D.C., dealing with the American administrations. You'll be very surprised by some of what they had to go through, and of course you'll have a chance to call in, speak out with your questions, your comments. We're going to be right back right after these messages.
Thanks for listening.
Attention New Yorkers. Keep washing your hands with soap and water, or use hand sanitizer. Keep staying home if you're sick, except to receive medical care. It helps to keep others from getting sick. Keep doing your part to keep your friends and family safe. Wash your hands, stay home if you're sick, and get tested regularly. For more information, visit nyc.gov/health/coronavirus.
This is Mimi Rosemarin, Director of Global Development from Meir Panim. When the second wave of coronavirus hit Israel, Israelis were hungry and in need of food. Meir Panim was there serving meals. While Israel is still in a phase of lockdown, where many businesses and schools can't reopen, Meir Panim is here serving and delivering meals to the most vulnerable. Coronavirus came and our soup kitchens were overwhelmed with hungry mouths to feed. As you light the Hanukkah menorah, think of those that are hungry and help them kindle an everlasting light, the light of hope. For many, Meir Panim provides them their only hot meal of the day, and most importantly, hope. To learn more about how you can support Meir Panim Soup Kitchens, visit meirpanim.org.
Are you unhappy with your old and unnatural-looking dentures? Do you want to replace your missing teeth with implants that feel strong and healthy? If so, then you should schedule an appointment with Dr. Tamechi. Dr. Tamechi is at the forefront of dental implantology and has been a faculty member of the NYU Department of Periodontics and Implantology for over 14 years. He's the founder of Dental Implant Surgical Seminar, or DISS. This is an implant training school for doctors learning implant treatments on live patients while providing free care to underprivileged communities. With Dr. Tamechi's use of computer-guided implant placement and 3D imaging, the exact placement of teeth is achieved even before being placed into the patient. Services range from the most difficult cases, such as full mouth implants, sinus lifts, and major bone grafting, to a simple single implant. Sedation services are also available upon request. Come in for your complimentary consult at Dr. Tamechi's state-of-the-art office in Astoria, Queens, and obtain the beautiful smile you've always wanted and at a reasonable price. Call today at 718-956-7800. Once again, 718-956-7800, or visit drtermechi.com for more information.
Living in very challenging times with things very unsettling. Let Hanukkah, the festival of lights, uplift our spirits and put a spark to our daily lives. Since we can't make it to Israel for Hanukkah, we can get a taste of the Holy Land with Evan Zahav's award-winning Jerusalem Gold Wines, which will enhance the celebration of the Festival of Lights. Choose from the Evan Zahav Special Reserve Cabernet Sauvignon Merlot, Premium Merlot, Premium Shiraz, and Petite Shiraz. Other uplifting choices to make your Hanukkah sparkle include Du Privilege, the finest kosher cognac from France. It's a gold medal winner and comes in a variety of exquisite bottles. Other great cognac choices include gold medal winner Du XO, the Du Cognac XO Louis Memory Hors d'Age, and very light and silky gold medal winner Du Extra Black. The Marquis de Brim Cognac XO in a special gift box is a great gift to give. Its best selection of the Premier's crust of cognacs. It makes a great Hanukkah gift. Let's celebrate Hanukkah by all of us making a l'chaim and letting our spirits be uplifted with Evan Zahav, premium wines from Israel, and the finest kosher cognacs in the world.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Don't blow a fuse because you're having trouble making a connection with an electrician. Hershey Fromowitz and his licensed crew at Safety Electric take pride in responding quickly and safely to all your electrical needs. Whether large or small, private or commercial, Safety Electric is here to service you at prices that are affordable, especially during these trying times. They do new meters, remove violations, new wiring, and camera systems, as well as renovations and 220-volt wiring. Safety Electric is light years ahead of the competition, so for quality work, reasonable prices, and your satisfaction guaranteed, please call 347-645-4321 for a free quote and take charge of all your electrical needs. That's 347-645-4321.
With colder weather, we'll all be spending more time indoors, where less air circulates and there are more people. And it will be even more important to keep our face coverings on. Face coverings help prevent the spread of COVID-19. Keep yourself and others safe. Do your part. Wear your face covering, indoors and outdoors. Learn more at nyc.gov/health/coronavirus.
Welcome back to the program. Zev Brenner. I always enjoy having Dr. Tevi Troy with us. He's, I think, one of our most frequent and popular guests on the program. He is a presidential historian, former White House aide. He also was a Jewish liaison. His latest book is called Fight House, Rivalries in the White House from Truman to Trump. But his article that just appeared is called A Brief History of Israel's Ambassadors to Washington, Their Successes and Their Troubles. Tevi, good to have you back.
Hey, thanks. That's very flattering that I'm one of the most frequent guests. I think it's a fantastic program, and it's just an honor to be on every time.
We enjoy having you. You always have some great stuff that you uncover. And what's been the reaction, first of all, to the articles? You write about different administrations and Israeli ambassadors and a lot of the secrets that are out there. What has been the word on the street about your article in Mosaic?
Yeah, I've gotten tremendous response. People really love it. Somebody said to me that it's the only article that gets positive tweets from both Matt Brooks and Peter Beinart, meaning obviously people on the right and on the left. And look, I love Israel, and this isn't a political piece. It's a political history piece. It's some of the funniest and most entertaining and exciting stories about what Israeli ambassadors to Washington have done. The only negative thing I heard was from one of the former ambassadors, and I'm not going to say his name, but let's just say he wasn't sufficiently covered in the piece and was upset about that. Okay. And my only response to that is, if there's a good story about you in the public record, you're going to be in the piece. And if there's no good or fun stories, it's not going to happen.
Now, it's interesting. There's usually a separate ambassador to Washington, a separate ambassador to the United Nations. But starting next month, the Gilad Erdan is going to be both the ambassador to Washington and to the United Nations, which is unusual because I think one of the people who did that was Avi Eban. But most of the time, you have a separate one. So why is it, in your opinion, are we having only one serving both functions?
Yeah, I got to be honest, I don't know how sustainable it is. I don't know if it's a great idea. I mean, Israelis talk about this concept of hasbara, which is explaining themselves to the world and to people in countries outside of Israel. And having two people do hasbara in those very important positions, both at the UN and Washington, is better, in my opinion, than having one, no matter how talented Gilad Erdan is. And I've heard nothing bad about the guy. I just think we should have more people out there talking about how great Israel is.
Now, lots of times you have a president that may be more disposed towards Israel, but you have the State Department that has its own policy. And you're right about that, during the book. For example, even the first Israeli ambassador to Washington had to deal with a Secretary of State who was opposed to Israel, and he had to go round to the Congress, right? That started all the way from the get-go.
I mean, it's more than opposed to Israel. I mean, we've had lots of them who are opposed to Israel. This guy was opposed to actually recognizing Israel, to even allowing Israel to exist from the various moments. We're talking, of course, about George Marshall, was a great general in World War II, but when it came to Israel, was not a big fan. And so it is true. Ambassador Epstein, or Eilat was his Hebraicized name, but it was originally Epstein. He went to Congress and was one of the first ambassadors to recognize that Congress was sometimes more friendly territory to Israel than the administrations, and certainly Foggy Bottom, which is where the State Department is.
And he got a $100 million export-import bank loan in 1949 because of his effort, which is a great sum of money. Even today,
that was real money back then, huh?
Right, there's a lot of money in those days, too. So who would you say of all the ambassadors had the hardest time dealing in Washington?
Ooh, that's a good question. In some sense, it was Michael Oren, who dealt with a very hostile Obama administration. I have a great story in there about how he was constantly trying to get a meeting with Hillary Clinton, and Hillary Clinton would not meet with him. This is when she was Secretary of State. And then they kind of bump into each other at a meeting, and she playfully punches him on the arm and says, "Michael Oren, I keep trying to meet with you, and you won't meet with me." So, I mean, she kind of makes fun of the fact that they were refusing to meet with him. He also got yelled at a lot by the Obama administration. So he had a rough time. But I also think it was maybe Zalman Shoval, who was the ambassador during the George H.W. Bush years, and there was that big fight between Israel and the Bush administration, and Shoval kind of pushed back on the Bush administration. I didn't think it was in that rough a way, but there was huge uproar about what he said, and he was forced to apologize. So I think he had a rough time, too.
But he didn't only have a rough time with the Bush administration. Didn't Zalman Shoval have a rough time with Jimmy Carter's administration, with Brzezinski, who was, I think, an anti-Semite? But you write that he was also as an ignoramus, too.
Right. Well, to be fair, he had a bad meeting with Brzezinski, but it was after Brzezinski was, thank God, out of power. But he did talk to Brzezinski with his wife, and Brzezinski asked his wife when the wife's family got to Israel, and she said 1921. And Brzezinski, who's supposed to be this great policy intellectual, said, "What, there were Jews in Israel in 1921?" I mean, he had no idea about the first Aliyah, or the fact that there were Jews in Israel continuously since the Roman destruction of the temple. It wasn't a huge community, and they weren't in charge of the government there, but there was a continuous Jewish presence for 2,000 years.
Right, and this was somebody who was supposed to be in the know and was setting policy for our government. So this is, unfortunately, you find that the case. But getting back to the Obama years, because you write about Michael. I'm sorry?
Must we?
Well, I mean, listen, it's certainly the closest that a lot of our listeners that are tuning in. But I know you wrote a review. The President Obama wrote a book, and he was pretty critical about Israel. And I know you wrote a critique about it. But was the tone, you mentioned about that the Secretary of State Clinton refused to meet with him. That was official policy, that they gave Israel a hard time. What about keeping the Prime Minister waiting when he had a meeting in the White House? There were all kinds of things that happened that I think made for a contentious relationship, including the Prime Minister going to the Republican Congress and trying to stop the Iranian arms deal.
Yeah, and also I have a story in there about Rahm Emanuel getting in Michael Oren's face and kind of pushing his finger in his chest and said, I'm not going to use the curse words he said, but he just said, "You do not come to the White House and lecture the President of the United States," and he used a lot of bad words in between. So that was bad. And then the time when Biden went to Israel, and Israel announced that they were building some houses in eastern Jerusalem. It had nothing to do with the Biden visit, but Clinton berated Netanyahu about that announcement. And then the Deputy Secretary of State, a guy named James Steinberg, kind of summoned Michael Oren to the White House and not only yelled at him, but had his whole staff listen in, and the staff was kind of all cheering about the attack on Israel and specifically on the Israeli ambassador. So yeah, they didn't have the best time in the Obama administration.
No, it doesn't sound like it. And, are we in for something similar? Obviously, it won't be as bad during a Biden administration. Some of the people from the Obama administration will be working in a Biden White House.
Yeah, I'm hoping not. I think some of the most hostile people to Israel from the previous administration, including Obama himself, are not going to be in the administration again. So I'm hoping that Israel gets a better shake this time. That said, there have been some challenges with Joe Biden. You and I talked a couple of weeks ago about the famous blow-up he had with Menachem Begin back in 1982. So I guess we'll have to see. I'm choosing to enter the administration in an optimistic way, and I'm hoping for the best. So I'm not going to criticize until there's something to criticize.
Okay, but you hope you're not counting your days, because hopefully there won't be something to criticize. But obviously the Iranian deal and going back, and if that gets back into motion, will be a bad thing. And there's certainly going to be a difference in tone and style than the current administration. That I think we can all agree upon.
Sure, but let me praise the Biden administration. It might not continue once the administration begins, but let me praise them right now, because they've said that they support the idea of the Abraham Accords, and they're going to keep trying to push that concept. So I think that's also the good, and I think that's something that both parties can get behind. If Israel has more positive relationships and peace agreements with other Sunni Arab nations, I think that's also the good.
Let's talk about Richard Nixon. Let's talk about Henry Kissinger, because Henry Kissinger was Jewish, and we know the Nixon tapes where he talked about the liberal Jews, but yet, Richard Nixon surprised a lot of people, and Henry Kissinger surprised a lot of people. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's a little complicated, because Nixon, indeed, the thing you're alluding to is that he did back Israel in the 1973 Yom Kippur War.
He actually saved Israel in the 1973 Yom Kippur War.
Yeah, with Operation Nickel Glass, which was to bring all these arms to Israel. But first of all, Kissinger was initially banned from dealing with Israel policy in the first few years of the administration, because they thought as a Jew that he couldn't weigh in on the issue, which is ridiculous. But then there's this one great incident that I talk about in my book Fight House, where Kissinger gives an opinion about Israel at one point, and Nixon looks at him and brutally says, "Can we have the American point of view now, Henry?" Which is just a really cruel thing to say. But then when it came down to it, it was Kissinger who was more reluctant to give the aid to Israel in 1973 than Nixon was. And Nixon said that let's give them aid, and then there was questions about how much aid, and Nixon said, we're going to get criticized for a little or a lot, so let's just give them everything we got. And they did, and that really did help save Israel and turn the tide of the war.
But you're right about an exchange between Simcha Dinitz, who was the ambassador during the Yom Kippur War with Henry Kissinger, and he really wanted that Israel should stop their advances against the Egyptian Third Army. And you have a funny exchange where Kissinger tells Dinitz about why he should stop, and the expression that he used.
Right. So you're right that the Third Army was trapped and Israel was pressing against them, and there was a fear that the Soviets would get involved, and Kissinger and Nixon had this grand strategy of getting the Soviets out of the Middle East, which I got to say they were successful. The Soviets stayed out of the Middle East and the Russians until recent years, which is an unfortunate development. But Kissinger is really pressing the point with Dinitz about how they have to stop the advance of the Israelis against the Third Army, and he calls him from the Situation Room, and he says, and I apologize if these words offend any of your viewers, he says, "Jesus Christ, don't you understand?" And then he realized he was talking to the Israeli ambassador, the Jewish ambassador, and he just stops, and Dinitz says that Kissinger might be more persuasive if he would cite a different prophet, which I just think is brilliant.
Right, and what did Kissinger respond? That's not recorded for history, I guess.
He said, "Oh." he recognized that he had overstepped.
The prolific writer and Dr. Tevi Troy, he was formerly in part of the Bush administration. He was a Jewish liaison. By the way, before I break, are you going to there's a whole big to-do about the Hanukkah party in the White House. Are you going this year to the Hanukkah party in the White House?
Yeah, it's kind of complicated, and we're very concerned about the coronavirus protocol, so we're looking into the issue.
Because a lot of people that are usually go and not going, there's a whole big to-do about going. People want to go. They love the lamb chop, which is, aside from being with the president, it's the highlight of being in the White House Hanukkah party. So people say they're going to go and not eat, and some people are not going to go. And so they have people ordinarily that wouldn't get invited or getting invited. They're looking to fill the seats, from what I understand.
Right. And to be fair, they are requiring that everybody wear masks, and they said it's a smaller party than usual, and they're going to have hand sanitizer there. But, it's a very difficult time. We have a high case rate right now, and I know in Maryland they're very concerned, which is where I live. So let's put a wait and see on this one.
Dr. Tevi Troy, our guest, and we're looking at the Israeli ambassadors and some of their tense relationships with the American administrations from 1948 till the present time. When we come back, we'll take some of your phone calls. If you'd like to chime in, our numbers are 212-769-1925, extension 100, 212-769-1925. You want to email us, zevbrenner@gmail.com. 1 week from tonight, Rabbi Avi Weiss, the leader of Open Orthodoxy and also formerly a Jewish activist, will be on hand 1 week from tonight. Again, our numbers are 212-769-1925, extension 100. We're going to be right back.
Check this out.
Attention, New Yorkers. Keep your friends safe when you're out. Wear a face covering, whether it's two of you or a group of you. Whether you're going out or getting together, keep a safe distance. Stay 6 feet apart. Keep doing your part to keep your friends and family safe. Wear your face covering, keep your distance, and get tested regularly. For more information, visit nyc.gov/health/coronavirus.
This is Mimi Rosemarin, Director of Global Development from Meir Panim. When the second wave of coronavirus hit Israel, Israelis were hungry and in need of food. Meir Panim was there serving meals. While Israel is still in a phase of lockdown, where many businesses and schools can't reopen, Meir Panim is here serving and delivering meals to the most vulnerable. Coronavirus came and our soup kitchens were overwhelmed with hungry mouths to feed. As you light the Hanukkah menorah, think of those that are hungry and help them kindle an everlasting light, the light of hope. For many, Meir Panim provides them their only hot meal of the day, and most importantly, hope. To learn more about how you can support Meir Panim soup kitchens, visit meirpanim.org.
Celebrate Hanukkah with the National Yiddish Theater Folksbiene on Tuesday, December 8th at 7 p.m. for a free star-studded Folksbiene Hanukkah Spectacular featuring Mayim Bialik, Billy Crystal, Beanie Feldstein, Barry Manilow, Mandy Patinkin, Neil Tzedakah, Tova Felchel, Joel Gray, Isaac Perlman, and over 50 Broadway and Yiddish stage stars from all over the world. Free to join, donations welcome. Learn more at nytf.org/spectacular. Help usher in the Festival of Lights with the stars. That's nytf.org/spectacular. Happy Hanukkah from the Folksbiene.
Living in very challenging times with things very unsettling. Let Hanukkah, the Festival of Lights, uplift our spirits and put a spark to our daily lives. Since we can't make it to Israel for Hanukkah, we can get a taste of the Holy Land with Evan Zahav's award-winning Jerusalem Gold Wines, which will enhance the celebration of the Festival of Lights. Choose from the Evan Zahav Special Reserve Cabernet Sauvignon Merlot, Premium Merlot, Premium Shiraz, and Petite Shiraz. Other uplifting choices to make your Hanukkah sparkle include Du Privilege, the finest kosher cognac from France. It's a gold medal winner and comes in a variety of exquisite bottles. Other great cognac choices include gold medal winner Du XO, the Du Cognac XO Louis Memory Hors d'Age, and very light and silky gold medal winner Du Extra Black. The Marquis de Brim Cognac XO in a special gift box is a great gift to give. Its best selection of the Premier's crust of cognacs. It makes a great Hanukkah gift. Let's celebrate Hanukkah by all of us making a l'chaim and letting our spirits be uplifted with Evan Zahav, premium wines from Israel, and the finest kosher cognacs in the world.
Oh, Hanukkah, my latkes are in the frying pan. What is the best oil to use? Of course, it's Della Rosa grapeseed oil, the natural companion to the potato latke. Why? Because Della Rosa grapeseed oil is made from the hidden secret oil in the grapeseed, making it the perfect companion to the potato latke. De La Rosa grapeseed oil will enhance the whole feeling of Hanukkah. It is the best cooking oil, never smokes up even 485 degrees, allows the true flavor of the food to come through and enhances health. Choose grapeseed oil from De La Rosa this Hanukkah, the true heart healthy oil. As the holy Chassam Sofer was the first to approve of it, so De La Rosa was the first to market it to America. Kosher for passive and all year round with the best supervision. You can find De La Rosa grapeseed oil in your local market and on Amazon.com. You can also order directly from De La Rosa by calling 718-333-0333. Again, that's 718-333-0333, or by visiting them online at delarosa613.com. That's DELAROSA 613.com. Use De La Rosa grapeseed oil to elevate the atmosphere of Hanukkah. Happy Hanukkah from De La Rosa.
New Yorkers, this holiday season, let's reduce the spread of COVID-19. This is not the year to travel to gather with family and friends. Traveling puts you, your family, and our communities at risk, as returning travelers can be a source of transmission. Celebrate with your own household members and virtually with friends and family. Let's take these precautions now so we can all be together in the future. For more information, visit nyc.gov/health/coronavirus.
Welcome back to the program. I'm Zev Brenner. Our guest is Dr. Tevi Troy. He's a presidential historian, and he's written a fascinating article for Mosaic Magazine about ambassadors and their relationship with American governments. Let's go to Stan in Forest Hills. You'll be our first caller for tonight. Our numbers are 212-769-1925. Go ahead, Stan.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Go ahead, Stan.
Getting a little echo, Zev, just a little echo. Okay. Doctor, I know... how are you? I know that Golda Meir was prime minister. One, was she ever an ambassador before she was a prime minister? And there has, as far as I know, there's never been a woman prime minister, ambassador from Israel to the United States. Am I wrong about that? Tell me. And why? If there
You're correct. There has never been a female ambassador to Washington from Israel. However, Golda was an ambassador to Russia, which is where she was born, to the Soviet Union, and she was a big hit there. But it's true, she never did. She was, however, a big rival with Abba Eban, whom I mentioned in the article as the first and perhaps one of the best-known ambassadors. And he became very well-known in America, and I talk about this in the article, through television. And Israelis didn't have television in those days, so Abba Eban was better known and better liked in America than he was in Israel. And there are two famous stories about Golda and him. At one point, she heard that he was thinking of running for prime minister, and she joked, "Of what country?" which is pretty cutting. And then another time, when she said something nasty about him, she was told by her staff, "But Abba speaks 5 languages," and she said, "So does the waiter at the King David Hotel." So she was not a big fan of Abba Eban.
The point is, why do you think there's never been a woman ambassador? And I thought maybe Tevi, she was not she worked for
Tevi
she worked under Shimon Peres, if I'm not mistaken on that.
Yes, Tevi Livni was senior in the Israeli government, and there have indeed been many senior people in the Israeli government, including, I believe, they had I know the Justice Minister, Tovali.
Well, why do you think there hasn't been an ambassador? What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's a great idea. I think they should. I think it would be great to have a female ambassador come and do the hasbara that I was talking about earlier, the explanation of what Israel's up to the West, and I think it's a great idea.
Anyway,
I'm a big fan of it, but I can't answer the question of why it hasn't happened yet.
Anyway,
Okay.
Stan, great call. Thanks for calling.
No problem. Bye-bye. Have a good night.
Okay, let's go to Alan in New York City, Manhattan. Go ahead, Alan. Your question or comment?
Hi, Zev. Hi, Dr. Troy. I was hoping, Dr. Troy Tevi, if you could share something. You talked about rivalries a moment ago. I've read a little bit about of your book from Fight House. Could you share? I know it's a little bit off topic, but could you share some of these internal, inside baseball stuff about the White House and some of the rivalries that were going on there?
Well, this is clearly a very well-read listener, Zev. Yes, I do have a book called Fight House. Thank you for bringing it up. And Fight House is a fascinating tale of all kinds of infighting that took place in the White House. A lot of it had to do with Israel, actually, and I mentioned Secretary of State Marshall earlier, he was involved in the original decision about whether to recognize Israel and got in such a nasty fight with Clark Clifford, who argued in favor of recognizing Israel and actually won the fight, that Clifford never again Marshall never again spoke to Clifford or uttered Clifford's name for the rest of his life. So he really bore a grudge about losing that fight over Israel. So if you like that kind of nasty inside politics stuff, Fight House is the book for you.
Anyway, thank you for a good question.
Thank you, Dr. Troy.
Thank you. A few moments we have left. The whole relationship with the evangelical Christians is due to an Israeli ambassador. You're right. I believe it was Moshe Aaron. So tell us about that, because that became a critical political group that helped Israel. In fact, you also write about a shift between Democrats and Republicans, where Israeli administrations tend to gravitate more towards Republicans than Democrats as time went on.
Yeah, that's a really good one, and this one has a special resonance for me because my father, who's still with us, 90 years old, was friends with Moshe Aaron. They grew up together, and he knew Moshe Aaron. And Moshe Aaron recognized, because he was American and one of the few ambassadors who actually had the American origin, like Michael Oren as well. But Moshe Aaron recognized the importance of evangelicals in American politics, and he argued for cultivating them and working with them. And I think that was really important in bringing the Republican Party to be a much more pro-Israel party than it was initially. Certainly in the Eisenhower days, it wasn't such a pro-Israel party. And then the second thing that Moshe Aaron was involved with was working on free market economics. And he introduced Jack Kemp, who was one of the big proponents of free market economics within the Republican Party, to Bibi Netanyahu. And Netanyahu took a lot of those ideas when he was finance minister to help change Israel around from the socialist economy it was to the startup nation that it is today. And that really helped bolster the relationship between Israel and the Republican Party. Because before that, the Republicans would say, what's with this socialist country? Senator Rudy Boschwitz once told me this story, that one of his colleagues said to him, you Jews are such great businessmen, why do you have a socialist country? Which, is not the most, politically correct way of saying something. But the fact is that a lot of Republicans were put off by how socialist Israel was in the early days, and now they like the fact that Israel is a much more entrepreneurial, innovative economic powerhouse.
I want to go back a moment to Moshe Aaron, because the reaching out to the evangelical community, because there was a change. I remember when Jimmy Carter was president, he was evangelical, and there was a whole big to-do about Jews not accepting the Christian Savior, and that meant they were condemned to purgatory. There was a whole big to-do. And then you saw a whole change where all of a sudden you have a whole movement that's so pro-Israel, and which brought the Republican Party. So that whole change is just revolutionary.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have to give credit here to Rabbi Yechiel Eckstein as well, a friend of mine who passed away, unfortunately, a few years ago. But he recognized when he was working at the Anti-Defamation League that there was a possibility of building this tie between the evangelicals and Israel and the American Jewish community. And the people at the ADL kind of scoffed at him, and they rejected him. And he went and founded his own organization, the Fellowship Between Christians and Jews, which has become a huge organization, but really helped build that tie, and is one of the reasons why Israel has such a staunch group of supporters among the evangelical Christian community today.
Now, Yitzhak Rabin, he certainly was an ambassador to Washington, and tell us about it, because he got himself into trouble because of his time that he was in the United States.
Yeah, so Rabin is thus far the only ambassador to Washington who became prime minister. So we have to acknowledge that. He also picked up some habits while he was in Washington. One of them was tennis. He became a big tennis player, and he would play tennis every Saturday morning. He would be smoking his cigarettes, get to the court, put down his cigarette, play his tennis, and then move on. And also whiskey. He developed a taste for fine whiskey while he was in Washington. But one other thing he picked up here was a bank account, an American bank account, which was not legal in Israel back in its bad old socialist days. And when he comes back to Israel and becomes prime minister, and there's a revelation about this. There's actually some good gumshoe reporting by a reporter who heard a thing about it, or heard a kind of rumor about it, and then he went to the bank and he tried to deposit money in Rabin's name, and then he wrote down the bank account number, and so he kind of found this whole scandal. And Rabin had to step down as prime minister because of this bank account. So again, he picked up some good habits, I guess, in Washington in terms of whiskey and the tennis, but some bad habits as well in terms of the bank account, which is not legal.
Now, you write something fascinating, a story with Rabbi Stanley Rabinowitz, and going and also
Rabin also, interestingly, he went to the Adas Israel synagogue where he would pray, and he was there on Yom Kippur one time. I tell the story in the article as well, that he was there, and William Safire, who's actually one of my heroes growing up, a New York Times columnist. William Safire was a White House speechwriter at the time, and he was writing speeches for Spiro Agnew, the vice president, and he wrote these great alliterative speeches where he talked about the nattering nabobs of negadism.
That was a classic. How many people remember that? I remember that was like a classic. Right.
People talk about Trump like Trump is criticizing the press like no Republican has ever criticized the press before. But Agnew was pretty harsh in criticizing the press, as was Nixon. So anyway, Safire is writing these pretty sharp speeches, and the rabbi of Adas Israel blasts the politicians who use alliteration to make their points, and it's really a direct attack not only on Agnew but on Safire himself, who wrote the speech. And Safire's sitting there in the audience. He feels uncomfortable. He said, "This was not the sin I had come to atone for," which is a great line. And then later, Rabin commiserated with Safire, and Safire suspected that Rabin even went to the rabbi and kind of rebuked him for what had happened.
Wow. Let's go to Jimmy in Brooklyn. You have a question for our guest. Go ahead, Jimmy.
No, I just want to make a statement here. I am not a Jewish person. I'm a Christian. I don't pretend to be a good Christian, but I'm an anti-communist activist. And from Soviet publications, people don't understand that a lot of this radical Islamic stuff comes from the Soviet training. Capitalism is racism. To destroy racism, you have to destroy capitalism. Then they started teaching Zionism is racism.
So your point that you want to make is?
I want to make a point that there's an active communist movement that's out there, and that's largely behind a lot of this radical anti-Jewish, anti-Israel sentiment. It's highly organized, and it goes back for several decades, and it's being ignored. I have Soviet publications where they talk about Arab liberation.
Oh, there's no question that they've been behind it, and the protocols of the other design. Jimmy, I appreciate your phone call. We're almost out of time. So as we close out...
Can I just make a point? I just want to say,
sure.
Yes to Jimmy. I think there are some really disturbing trends of anti-Semitism coming from the left, and something that we should be watching out for. So I appreciate that, Jimmy. And you may say you're not a good Christian, but I really appreciate what you're saying out there. So thank you.
And Jimmy, don't put yourself down. Final question is that there's a legend that every Secretary of State leaves office hating Israel, and they mentioned this to James Baker, and he said allegedly would have said, "What happens if you started out that way?" You've heard that legend, right? Is it true?
I mean, I've heard the legend. I don't know if it's true. What do they say in the Man Who Shot Liberty Valance? When the facts get in the way of the legend, print the legend. So yeah, it is. But let me just cite one Secretary of State who didn't take that approach, was George Shultz. I remember
he was terrific.
I was a relatively young boy when Alexander Haig, who was a fan of Israel, left as Secretary of State, and George Shultz came in. And I remember my father, who's a huge Israel lover, was very nervous about Shultz. He had all these ties to the Arab world.
We have 10 seconds left.
Name.
But
and Shultz
was great.
And Shultz became a huge fan of Israel and was a big supporter of Israel. So sometimes Secretaries of State actually get better. So
Dr. Tevi, I want to thank you for being with us. I look forward to having you back again. And thank everybody for tuning in tonight. Go to TalkLineNetwork.com. And we're with you 24 hours a day. And thank you for being part of our show tonight.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to Talkline Communications Network, America's leading Jewish radio and TV network since 1981. This concludes Jewish programming for tonight. For continuous, non-stop Jewish broadcasting, please go right now online to TalklineCommunications.com. For more information on all of Talkline's Jewish radio and TV shows, please call 212-769-1925 or email info@TalklineCommunications.com.
Talkline's new 24-hour-a-day listen line is 712-77...